Here is the thought that won't let me sleep. Forget the equations. Forget the particles. Forget the elegant symmetries of physics. This is stranger than all of it. Right now, wherever you are, pinch your arm. Go on, feel that sharp pressure, that spark of sensation. Something just experienced that. There is something present, something aware, something that felt. Now pause. We know what your skin is made of. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. We know what your nerves are made of. The same ingredients. We know what your brain is built from, roughly 86 billion neurons woven into around 100 trillion connections. Electrochemical pulses leap across synapses. Ions flow. Proteins shift. Molecules collide. It is all atoms. But where is the thing that felt the pinch? Point to it. You'll probably tap your head. Most people do. But open the skull, peer inside with the finest instruments we possess, and what do we see? Cells. Electrical gradients. Networks firing in pattern cascades. Chemistry unfolding in exquisite detail. We never see the experiencer. Not once do we locate the redness of red. Not once do we bump into the painfulness of pain. Not once do we isolate the taste of chocolate as anything other than neural activity. And yet you are undeniably having experiences. This is not a minor puzzle tucked into a corner of neuroscience. This may be the deepest mystery we have ever encountered. Let's begin somewhere simple. Look around. Colors flood your vision. Shapes carve themselves out of space. Sounds form a layered tapestry in your ears. Maybe you feel the chair supporting you, the floor pressing up through your feet. It feels immediate, effortless, natural. But what is actually happening? Light, electromagnetic radiation bounces off objects. Photons stream into your eyes. They strike the retina and trigger electrochemical changes. Signals race along the optic nerve to the visual cortex at the back of your brain. Neurons fire, patterns assemble. Information flows, and then something extraordinary occurs. You see red, but there is nothing red in the light itself. Red is simply radiation around 700 nanometers in wavelength. It is numbers, oscillations, field fluctuations. There is nothing red in a neuron either. A neuron firing is sodium ions crossing a membrane, electrical potentials shifting. So where does the redness come from? Philosophers call these felt qualities. Qualia. The blueness of blue. The bitterness of coffee. The ache of a headache. These are not abstract data points. They are lived sensations. Someone is home to receive them. But who and how? The brain explanation feels satisfying at first glance. Consciousness comes from the brain. Of course it does. Damage the brain and consciousness changes. Alter its chemistry and awareness fades or warps. But that isn't an explanation. That's pointing at the stage and saying, the play happens there. Imagine asking how a car moves and being told, because of the engine. Fine. But how does the engine produce motion? Pistons rise and fall. Fuel combusts. Pressure builds. The crankshaft turns. The wheels spin. Step by step, mechanism by mechanism, we can trace the entire chain from chemical energy to forward motion. Now try the same with consciousness. Photons hit the retina. Signals fire. Cortical neurons activate. Networks synchronize. And then you see red. Where is the bridge? What transforms electrical activity into experience? No one can show you that step. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. Not how the brain processes information. Not how it controls behavior. Those are incredibly difficult problems, but they are engineering problems. We can imagine solving them. The hard problem asks something else entirely. Why does information processing feel like anything at all? Why isn't it all happening in complete darkness? Let's push this further. Picture a robot so advanced that it behaves exactly like you. It sees, speaks, reacts, writes poetry, claims to feel pain. From the outside, it is indistinguishable from a conscious being. But inside, nothing. No inner movie, no light. Just machinery crunching inputs into outputs. Is that possible? Physics doesn't forbid it. Our equations say nothing about experience. They describe particles, forces, fields. Nowhere does an equation whisper, and here arises awareness. That silence is unsettling. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once posed a question that seems innocent, but isn't. What is it like to be a bat? Bats navigate with sonar. They emit high-frequency sounds and interpret the echoes to construct their world. Their experience must be radically different from ours. We can imagine what it would be like for us to have sonar. But that's still our imagination. We cannot access what it is like from the bat's point of view. Consciousness has perspective baked into it. Science studies the world from the outside. Consciousness exists only from the inside. Bridging that gap may require more than better microscopes. Now consider this: your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, about as many as stars in our galaxy. Each neuron connects to thousands of others. Signals ripple across vast neural constellations. Different aspects of a single object are processed in different regions. Color here, shape there, motion somewhere else, location in yet another network. And yet you do not experience a shattered mosaic. You experience one apple, one unified perception. How does the brain bind scattered processes into a single, seamless experience? Some scientists proposed synchrony as the answer. When neurons fire together, especially at gamma frequencies around 40 cycles per second, their timing aligns. Perhaps that temporal harmony knits features into a whole, but synchrony explains coordination, not experience. It tells us about timing, not about feeling. Neurons can fire in synchrony in multiple brains at once. That doesn't merge our consciousness into a single shared mind. Why is your experience yours and mine mine? Atoms don't carry name tags. Speaking of atoms, nearly every atom in your body has been replaced over time. The carbon, oxygen, hydrogen cycling through you today were not all present years ago. Consciousness cannot depend on specific atoms. It must depend on pattern. But atoms themselves are mostly empty space. What you call solid is a dance of fields and forces. Electromagnetic repulsion keeps electrons from collapsing into one another. The solidity of the world is a kind of illusion arising from interactions. Your brain is not a solid machine. It is a dynamic pattern in quantum fields, and somehow that pattern knows it exists. Some theorists suggest consciousness might reside in the electromagnetic field generated by neural activity. When neurons fire, they create tiny field fluctuations. Perhaps the unified electromagnetic field binds experiences together. It's intriguing. But magnets have electromagnetic fields too. We do not assume they dream. Others look to quantum mechanics. Maybe tiny quantum processes in microtubules, structures within neurons, play a role. Quantum physics is strange enough to tempt speculation, superposition, entanglement, non-local correlations. Yet even if quantum effects are involved, the problem remains. Quantum equations describe behavior. They do not explain why behavior feels like something. Calling consciousness quantum merely relocates the mystery. Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine we record every single neural event occurring in your brain while you see a red apple. Every firing neuron, every chemical release, every voltage shift. Now we reproduce that exact pattern in a synthetic system. Does it experience red? What if we slow the pattern down by half? Is the experience now in slow motion? What if we reverse it? Does the apple on happen? What if we scramble the sequence? Every component is still present, but the relational structure is gone. Does consciousness vanish with structure? Perhaps consciousness depends not on ingredients, but on organization. But what organization? And why should that organization generate feeling? Suppose we encode the full description of your brain at a moment in a vast book. Every particle state meticulously inscribed. Is the book conscious? It contains the information, but static information seems insufficient. Consciousness appears to require process, dynamics, unfolding. How much? What kind? We don't know. Now consider anesthesia. Alter certain neural dynamics and consciousness disappears. Not replaced by darkness, not replaced by blankness, simply absent. Time passes with no witness. Then consciousness returns. What switched off? What switched back on? The atoms remained. The structure largely remained. The difference lay in patterns of activity. But hurricanes also have complex dynamic patterns. They are not conscious. Complexity alone does not suffice. Perhaps consciousness is emergent, like wetness from water. Individual molecules are not wet. Together they flow, adhere, soak. But wetness is a behavioral description. Consciousness is not merely a description of behavior. It is the presence of experience itself. The explanatory gap persists. Some suggest consciousness is an illusion, that there is no inner light, only a system generating reports about having experiences. But an illusion must appear to someone. If consciousness is an illusion, it is an illusion experienced. Eliminating consciousness by redefining it dissolves into contradiction. What if consciousness is fundamental? Not produced by matter, but a basic feature of reality, like mass or charge. Perhaps certain arrangements of matter instantiate or channel this fundamental aspect. This view is radical, but so was the idea that space and time bend. We may need new principles entirely. Let's go stranger. In severe epilepsy, surgeons sometimes sever the corpus callosum, the 200 million fibers connecting the brain's hemispheres. Afterward, patients behave mostly normally. But subtle tests reveal something astonishing. Information presented to one hemisphere may be inaccessible to the other. It is as if two streams of awareness coexist in one skull. Is there one consciousness or two? Where exactly are the boundaries of a mind? Now imagine a teleporter that scans you completely, destroys your body, and reconstructs you elsewhere atom by atom. The copy awakens believing it is you, with all your memories. Did you survive? Or did you die, replaced by a perfect duplicate? If continuity of pattern is enough, then survival makes sense. If continuity of original physical matter is required, then perhaps not. Is there even a stable, enduring you, or only a chain of momentary experiences stitched together by memory? Who is the self at this very instant? Every experience you have lags slightly behind the world. Signals take time. Processing takes time. Your brain integrates delayed inputs into a seamless present. You do not experience the stitching, you experience, now, you blink, visual input cuts out, yet your world does not flicker into darkness. The brain fills gaps, corrects for eye movements, predicts and smooths reality. Your experience is a model. But who is watching the model? There cannot be a tiny observer inside the brain looking at a screen. That leads to infinite regress. The experience must be self-generated without a hidden audience. But how? Most neural processing is unconscious. Heartbeat regulation, language parsing, face recognition, all beneath awareness. Why do some processes enter the light and others remain in shadow? What flips the switch? We call it attention, or global workspace, or neural ignition. But these are metaphors. The core remains untouched. And here is the final twist. Everything you know about the universe, physics, galaxies, equations, atoms, comes to you through consciousness. It is the medium of all knowledge. It is not peripheral. It is central. Pain hurts. Joy feels good. Meaning resides in experience. Without consciousness, there would be no value, no suffering, no wonder. You are a cluster of atoms forged in ancient stars. Hydrogen from the birth of the cosmos. Carbon from stellar furnaces. Oxygen from supernovae. Those atoms assembled into cells, tissues, organs, a brain, and now they are contemplating their own origins. Matter that asks questions. The universe becoming aware of itself. That may be the most astonishing fact of all. We do not yet know what consciousness is. Perhaps it is emergent computation. Perhaps it is fundamental. Perhaps it is something we have not even conceptualized. But the mystery is not a failure. It is an opening, because as long as this question remains unanswered, why experience exists at all, there is something profound left to explore. So here is the invitation. What do you think consciousness is? A byproduct of neural complexity, a fundamental feature of reality, a computational pattern, something beyond our current framework, or are we missing something obvious, something hiding in plain sight? Think carefully. Because whatever answer you choose, you are choosing it as a being made of atoms, atoms that somehow woke up and started wondering. And that, no matter how we explain it, is extraordinary. Let's go even deeper. Close your eyes for a moment. Behind your eyelids, there is not just darkness. There are faint colors, shifting patterns, the subtle hum of thought. There may be a memory drifting by, a fragment of yesterday, a plan for tomorrow, All of that is happening nowhere in physical space. If I point to your brain and say, "It's in there," I am speaking metaphorically. Experiences do not have spatial coordinates the way neurons do. I can locate a neuron in millimeters. I cannot locate the taste of coffee in three-dimensional space. Where, exactly, is the color red? Not the wavelength. Not the neuron. The redness itself. It does not seem to have mass. It does not seem to occupy volume. You cannot weigh it. You cannot photograph it. You cannot measure it in joules, and yet it undeniably exists. This creates a strange tension. Physics describes a world of measurable quantities, mass, charge, spin, momentum, fields evolving in space-time. Consciousness appears to involve qualities, color, pain, joy, or that do not fit neatly into that inventory. It's as if reality has two faces. One face is third-person, objective, measurable. The other face is first-person, subjective, lived. We have become astonishingly good at mapping the first face. We can calculate how stars fuse hydrogen into helium. We can predict how electrons scatter. We can simulate the evolution of galaxies. But the second face, the inside, remains opaque. Consider dreams. When you dream, an entire world appears. Landscapes, characters, events. It feels real while you're in it. You may fly. You may fall. You may speak to people who never existed. During that time, the external world is almost completely disconnected from your experience. Your brain is generating a virtual reality from the inside. But here's the unsettling part. Waking life is also a kind of constructed model. Your brain does not give you raw reality. It gives you a best guess, built from signals filtered through layers of interpretation. Color is not out there. It is an internal representation. Sound is not out there. It is pressure waves transformed into neural codes. Even solidity is an interpretation of electromagnetic repulsion. If all you ever access is the model, not the underlying reality, then your conscious world is an interface, not the thing itself. So what is the relationship between the interface and the experiencer? Let me ask you this. If you close your eyes and imagine a bright pink elephant balancing on a cloud, where does that elephant exist? There is no pink elephant in the room. There is no cloud, yet something appears. Is imagination less real than perception? From the inside, both are experiences. The difference lies in how they correlate with external events. This suggests something powerful. Consciousness is not merely passive reception. It is active generation. Your brain is constantly predicting what will happen next, filling in missing information, correcting errors between expectation and input. Some neuroscientists describe the brain as a prediction engine, minimizing surprise. In this view, what you experience is the brain's best hypothesis about the causes of its sensory signals. But even if that model is correct, it only shifts the puzzle. Why does prediction feel like something? Why does error correction have a glow to it? Why is there a movie playing at all? Let's examine the boundaries of consciousness. Right now you feel located behind your eyes. Your perspective seems centered in your head. But this sense of location is itself part of the model. Experiments can disrupt it. Under certain illusions, people feel their sense of self shift outside their body. With virtual reality setups, individuals can experience being located in a different body. Neurological disturbances can cause people to deny ownership of their limbs. The self, it turns out, is not a fixed entity. It is constructed. Your feeling of I is a narrative woven by neural processes integrating memory, perception, and bodily sensation. But if the self is constructed, does that mean it is unreal? Or does it mean reality includes constructed phenomena as genuine components? Let's revisit the split brain scenario. When the hemispheres cannot communicate, each side can possess information the other lacks. One hand may act on knowledge the speaking hemisphere denies. If each hemisphere can operate somewhat independently, perhaps each hemisphere has its own stream of awareness. So, what unifies you right now? Communication between parts of the brain seems essential. Could consciousness be a matter of integration? When information is widely shared and accessible across many systems, perhaps experience emerges. There is a theory called integrated information theory. that attempts something like this. It proposes that consciousness corresponds to the degree to which a system integrates information as a unified whole. Highly integrated systems would have richer experiences, minimally integrated ones, dimmer or none. It's an ambitious framework. But again, even if we measure integration, we still face the same question: why should integration feel like something rather than nothing? We can describe how components influence one another. We can quantify causal interactions, but causal structure does not obviously entail experience. Imagine a perfect simulation of a brain running on a computer, every neuron modeled down to the molecular level, every synaptic exchange captured. If the simulation reproduces the same causal structure, does it thereby generate consciousness? Some argue yes. If organization is what matters, then substrate is irrelevant. Silicon can host the same patterns as carbon. Others argue no. Simulation is not duplication. A weather simulation does not produce rain. A simulated fire does not generate heat. Which side is right? We do not have a reliable test. Behavior alone cannot settle it. A machine could insist it is conscious whether it is or not. This leads to a profound epistemic limitation. You can never step outside your own experience to compare it directly with another's. You assume other humans are conscious because they are similar to you. You assume animals have some level of experience because they behave in ways consistent with suffering or pleasure. But strictly speaking, the only consciousness you know directly is your own. And even that is mysterious. Consider how fragile consciousness is. A small dose of anesthesia can extinguish it. A slight lack of oxygen can dim it. A chemical imbalance can distort it. Consciousness is robust enough to have persisted through evolution, yet delicate enough to vanish with minor disruptions. Why did evolution produce conscious organisms at all? If behavior can be explained through neural processing alone, why add experience to the mix? Some argue consciousness has functional advantages. Perhaps it allows flexible planning, social modeling, abstract thought, but that addresses cognitive capacity, not feeling. A system might plan without feeling. It might simulate without suffering. Yet here we are, not just calculating, but caring. Pain motivates avoidance. Pleasure motivates pursuit. Emotions color decision-making. Perhaps experience is intertwined with value. Without consciousness, there would be no suffering, no joy, no meaning. In a purely mechanical universe, devoid of inner life, events would occur without mattering. The existence of experience transforms the cosmos. Suddenly, events have weight. Harm and benefit become real in a new dimension. This suggests that consciousness is tied to value. Wherever there is experience, there is potential for good or bad from that perspective. But again, how does perspective arise from particles? Let's examine continuity. You feel like the same person you were yesterday. Memories create a thread connecting moments, but memory is fallible. It can be altered, erased, fabricated. If your entire memory were replaced with false memories, would you still be you? If every atom in your body changes over time, but pattern and memory persist, is identity just continuity of structure? Now imagine replacing neurons one by one with artificial devices that replicate their function perfectly. At each step, behavior remains unchanged. Personality remains unchanged. The person insists they feel normal. At what point, if any, does consciousness disappear? Is there a threshold, a critical percentage of biological tissue required? Or is function sufficient? This thought experiment forces us to clarify what we believe consciousness depends on: a material composition, dynamic pattern, or something else entirely. Now step back further. Physics tells us that matter is excitations in quantum fields. Fields pervade the universe. Particles are ripples. If everything reduces to fields interacting, and if consciousness emerges from certain configurations of those fields, then perhaps awareness is a property of specific patterns in fundamental reality. But even this language is descriptive, not explanatory. Why should a ripple know it is a ripple? Why should a field feel itself? Perhaps we are missing a conceptual revolution, like the shift from Newtonian gravity to general relativity. Perhaps our current categories, matter versus mind, objective versus subjective, are incomplete. Maybe what we call physical and what we call mental are two aspects of a deeper underlying reality. Some philosophers suggest that every physical entity might have a rudimentary experiential aspect, an incredibly faint proto-consciousness. Not thoughts or feelings, but some minimal interiority. In such a view, complex minds arise from combinations of simpler experiential units. This idea, panpsychism, attempts to dissolve the leap from non-experience to experience by suggesting there was never absolute non-experience to begin with. It is a bold move. It avoids the emergence problem by redefining the base layer. But it introduces another puzzle. How do tiny experiential fragments combine into a unified human consciousness? This is known as the combination problem. Once again, the mystery shifts, but does not disappear. Perhaps consciousness is relational rather than intrinsic. Perhaps it arises only when systems reach a certain self-referential complexity, when a system can model itself modeling the world. In that case, consciousness would be linked to recursive representation. You would be aware because your brain contains representations of its own processes. But is a representation enough? A camera can record itself in a mirror. That does not make it conscious. Self-reference seems important, but not sufficient. Maybe consciousness is not a thing at all, but a process, an event unfolding in time. Like a flame, it exists only while burning. When neural activity ceases, the flame goes out. No residue remains. This view aligns with the idea that consciousness depends on dynamic activity rather than static structure. But again, flames do not feel like anything. The difference between a burning candle and a living brain is not merely complexity, it is the presence of experience. We keep circling the same abyss. And yet, despite the mystery, you cannot doubt that you are experiencing right now. It is the most certain fact available to you. You could doubt the external world. You could doubt your memories. You could doubt physics itself. But you cannot doubt that experience is happening. There is something it is like to be you at this moment. That fact is undeniable. And from that undeniable starting point, we attempt to build an understanding of everything else. Perhaps one day we will discover new laws connecting physical processes with experiential states. Perhaps we will map the precise neural signatures of each shade of color, each flavor of emotion. But mapping correlation is not the same as explaining existence. Until we can answer why existence includes an inner dimension at all, the deepest question remains open. You are a temporary arrangement of ancient atoms, configured in an astonishingly intricate pattern, suspended on a small planet orbiting a modest star in a vast galaxy, and somehow that arrangement is aware. It reflects, it questions, it wonders. The universe, through you, is asking what it is. Maybe consciousness is the way reality folds back on itself. Maybe it is the mirror in which matter sees its own face. Or maybe it is something stranger than anything we have yet imagined. So I'll leave you not with an answer, but with an invitation. If you had to wager your best guess, what would you say consciousness truly is? An emergent computation, a fundamental property, a self-organizing pattern of matter, a window into a deeper layer of reality? Or are we still missing the simplest idea of all? Whatever your answer, notice something extraordinary. The act of considering the question is itself an instance of consciousness. Atoms are rearranging inside your skull, exchanging ions and neurotransmitters, following the laws of physics. And from that dance arises thought. From that dance arises doubt. From that dance arises wonder. And perhaps, hidden somewhere in that wonder, is the clue we've been searching for all along.